I was a data analyst for a true crime podcast, and I found the pattern 6 months before anyone else did. The one that proved the quietest cold case in the state wasn't a series of disappearances at all, but a single impossible hand reaching across 30 years. It started with a spreadsheet. No, that's not dramatic enough. It started with a missing woman named Carrie Wells, who vanished from her apartment in Bakersfield on the night of November 3, 1992. The case file was thin, 18 pages. Boyfriend had an alibi, no signs of forced entry. She'd called her mother at 9:14 p.m. to say she was making tea and going to bed. Then nothing. The phone line stayed connected for 11 hours, dead air the whole time, before the phone company finally disconnected it manually. That detail never made it into any of the true crime episodes about her, because it didn't fit the narrative. Most people who covered the case focused on the boyfriend, on the window that was slightly ajar, on the missing necklace her sister said she wore every day. But that 11 hours of dead air, that was the thread I pulled. I worked for a podcast called Cold Ground. We weren't the biggest in the true crime space, but we had a loyal following and a reputation for digging deeper than the networks. My job was metadata, tagging timestamps, cross-referencing witness statements, building timelines. It was my 3rd year on the payroll, and I'd gotten good at seeing the shapes in the noise. The way certain names kept popping up in unrelated cases. The way certain police departments had suspiciously clean records in certain years. The things that looked like coincidences until you zoomed out. The pattern started with 3 names: Carrie Wells, 1992, Paul Hendricks, 1986, Diana Morse, 2001. I didn't connect them at first. I was cataloging Paul Hendricks's case for a potential Season 4 deep dive. He was a truck driver who disappeared from a rest stop outside Blythe. His wife reported him missing when he didn't show for a Sunday dinner. His rig was found still running, driver's door open, coffee cup warm on the dash. No blood, no struggle, just open desert air and a truck that idled for 3 hours before running out of fuel. Diana Morse was different. She was a teenager who'd gone missing from her bedroom in Fresno. Her parents heard her talking on the phone around midnight, then heard her say, "Okay, I'll come see," and then nothing. Her bed was still warm. The phone line, I noticed in the records, stayed active for 6 hours before the system dropped it. 6 hours of dead air, same as Carrie Wells, same circuit, I realized when I checked the exchange numbers. Both calls originated from the same rural switching station outside a town called Marlin, a place I'd never heard of. Population 187, according to the last census in 2000. Paul Hendricks didn't fit the phone pattern, but his truck had a CB radio. And when I dug into the archived police logs, I found a note from the responding officer. Hendricks's CB unit appeared to be keyed on. Channel 9. Dead carrier signal for approximately 4 hours before battery died. He'd been transmitting dead air for 4 hours. I brought it to my editor, Maria, on a Tuesday afternoon. She listened with her reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, stirring a cup of coffee that had gone cold. When I finished, she said, "You think there's a location in Marlin that's connected to these cases?" "I think there's something in Marlin that's connected to all of them," I said. "I ran the geography. Every one of these disappearances happened within 30 miles of that town, and there are more. I found 7 cases I'm 90% sure are related. Different decades, different law enforcement jurisdictions, different circumstances, but they all have the same detail, an open communication line that carries nothing but empty signal for hours after the person vanishes." Maria set down her coffee. "How many others have that detail?" I opened my laptop and showed her the spreadsheet. 47 cases spanning from 1978 to 2019. Every single one had a documented instance of an open phone line, a live radio channel, or an active recording device that continued transmitting static after the person disappeared. The durations varied. Shortest was 43 minutes, longest was 14 hours, but the pattern was unmistakable. Something was keeping those lines open. Something was listening. "We need to go to Marlin," Maria said. "That's how I ended up in a rental car on a 2-lane highway at dusk, 10 miles outside a town that most GPS systems didn't even have listed." Maria was driving. I was staring at the screen of my phone, watching the signal strength drop from 2 bars to 1 to a ghost icon that meant we were off the grid entirely. The road was straight and narrow, flanked by dry fields that hadn't been planted in years. The only structures we passed were an abandoned gas station with the pumps removed and a small white church with a bell tower that leaned slightly to the left, like it was trying to hear something planted in the ground. Marlin emerged from the dusk like a memory of a town. A main street with a hardware store, a diner, a post office no bigger than a trailer, a few houses with porches and rusted mailboxes, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and no one leaves. We found the phone switching station on the edge of town, a squat concrete building surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. The fence was old but intact. The gate was padlocked. Through the fence I could see a satellite dish angled not at the sky but at the ground. "That's not right," Maria said, pointing. "That dish is pointing at the earth." I didn't have an explanation. I took a photo. The camera on my phone made a sound like a radio crackling to life, and for a moment I heard a voice, faint, distant, stretching across a dead carrier wave. It said my name, just my name, nothing else. I turned to Maria. She hadn't reacted. She was still staring at the dish, her face pale in the fading light. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "Hear what?" I didn't tell her. I told myself it was wind. I told myself the static in my ears was just the natural silence of a rural evening. I told myself a lot of things that night, and none of them held up. We checked into the only lodging in town, a motel called the Granite Rest that smelled of carpet cleaner and old cigarette smoke. The woman at the front desk was maybe 70, with white hair pulled back tight and eyes that didn't blink enough. She didn't ask for a credit card. She just handed us keys to rooms 3 and 4, side by side, and said, "Stay in your rooms after 10 o'clock. That's the agreement." "What agreement?" Maria asked. The woman's eyes moved to the window where the parking lot was darkening. "The one the town keeps." We didn't ask more. We took our keys and went to our rooms. I tried to use my phone, but there was no service. The motel had a landline on the nightstand, but when I picked it up, there was only static, warm, breathing static, like the line was active, but no one was speaking. I set the phone down. It rang. I let it ring. 6, 7, 8 times. Then I picked it up. Nothing, just the static. But there was a quality to it now, a rhythm like someone was adjusting the volume of their silence in response to mine. I held the receiver to my ear for what felt like an hour, listening to the void listen back. And then, very quietly, I heard my name again, not from the phone, from the wall. I hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed. The motel room had a painting of a landscape on the wall, rolling hills, and a blue sky. But the longer I looked at it, the more I realized the hills had faces. Not obvious faces. Faces in the way you see shapes in clouds. A nose here, a closed eye there, carved into the topography like the land itself had been waiting to be noticed. I went to Maria's room. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, her laptop open, her face lit by the screen. "I found something," she said. She turned the screen toward me. It was a local history archive, a PDF of a town charter from 1947. The original name of Marlin was something else. A name in Spanish that translated roughly to "the place where voices wait." "There's a legend," Maria said. "I found it in a folklore database. The land here was considered a place where sounds didn't travel outward, they traveled down, into the earth, into a kind of reservoir, and once a sound went into the ground, it didn't come back, but it didn't decay either. It just waited." I thought about the satellite dish pointing at the soil. I thought about the open phone lines, the dead carrier signals, the hours of static that followed each disappearance. "They're not vanishing," I said slowly. "They're being pulled. Something underground is reaching up through the signal, through the dead air. It's using the open line as a path." Maria closed the laptop. "That's insane." "I know. But it's also the only explanation that fits." We sat in silence for a long time. The motel room had a clock on the wall that ticked louder than it should have. The window showed the parking lot, empty except for our rental car and a single pickup truck I hadn't seen before. At 10:03 p.m., every light in the motel went out, not the power, the light itself, as if someone had turned a dimmer switch and the world went dark. The clock stopped ticking. The streetlights outside went black. Even the moon seemed to retreat behind a cloud that hadn't been there a moment before. And then the static started. It came from everywhere, the walls, the floor, the ceiling, the furniture. A low, humming static that vibrated in my teeth. And beneath it, a voice, many voices. Voices layered over each other like a choir of the lost, all speaking at once, all saying the same thing. Come see, come see, come see. I grabbed Maria's arm. Don't say anything, don't answer, don't even breathe into the air. She nodded, her eyes were wide, but she held it together. We sat in the dark, in the static, in the press of voices that wanted us to respond. And eventually, as if disappointed by our silence, the sounds began to fade. The static dropped to a whisper, the whispering dropped to silence, and the lights came back on one by one like someone flipping switches in a distant room. The clock read 10:07 p.m. We packed our things and left. We didn't stop at the front desk. We didn't look back. We drove through dark streets that twisted and turned in ways I didn't remember from the drive-in, and for 20 minutes I was sure the road was looping back on itself. But eventually we hit the two-lane highway, and the signal bars returned to my phone, and the world became normal again. I'm writing this now from my apartment 3 days later. Maria and I are both on leave. The podcast is on hiatus. We told the police what we found, and they sent someone to Marlin, but the switching station was empty, cleaned out, the dish removed, the concrete building swept bare. The town records we accessed online have been taken down. The folklore database is gone. But last night I got a call on my landline. I checked the number. It wasn't from any exchange I recognized. I picked up anyway because something in me needed to know. There was static, warm, breathing static. And then very faintly I heard my name. And then another voice. Maria's voice from somewhere deep in the signal, saying 2 words I can't unhear. Come see, I haven't called her back. I'm afraid of what will happen if I do. I'm afraid the line will open and the place where voices wait will have been waiting for me all along. If you're listening to this, if anyone is, don't pick up the phone when it rings with dead air. Don't stay on the line. Don't listen for your name, because something down there is listening for yours.